I'm going to welcome you to B'nai Zion. I'm not going to apologize that our place is not big enough for Steve Muslow's funeral. He was president for the first 2 years that I served here as spiritual leader and rabbi, and he never packed a place like this before. I don't want to do this. I kept trying to prepare for this, and I kept saying, no, I'm just not going. I don't want to be here. There's a famous Jewish source that teaches, the deeper the sorrow, the less tongue it hath. I'm going to try to keep things brief. I suspect that your sorrow is deep too. I hope that you find your tongue and tell stories about Steve, because I guarantee you that every single one of you has a story about Steve. In fact, I guarantee every one of you have a few. And the more you tell, the more you're going to remember. And I guarantee that those stories, more than 99% of them are going to make you smile. It was something that was cheerful. It was something that made you laugh. It was something that made you feel like a better person. We don't have time to share them all during the service. There is a reception afterwards in Lefkowitz Hall, and that's maybe big enough to hold us. You're all invited. Greet, talk to the family, tell them stories. Don't just wait for today to tell them, though. Keep telling them. I'm going to begin by using the words from our tradition. We remember Steve and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to his family. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin this service with the recitation of Psalms and prayers, thus linking Steve's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. If you got a handout, then on the back of the handout is a prayer, a poem, a psalm that I know that you already know. I invite you to please join with me. I'm going to read a little bit of in Hebrew. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, benodeshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenachaleni, nafshi yishovev. Please join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in the paths of the righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The valley of the shadow of death, I'm guessing all the trees in that valley are planted by Muslow Forestry. That's what I think. I'm going to let you know that there are seats in the front row. I would love for you to be sitting. Please come in. It's not a problem. It looks like we could squish 4 or 5 in. 4 easy, 5, 6 squished. Please come in. It's a pretty green valley now because Steve planted all those trees. The psalmist has written, weeping may tarry into the night, but joy comes in the morning. El Malei Rachamim, O God full of compassion, please send your comfort to those who grieve. Help them to dispel the sadness that accompanies the pain of loss and to find a joy in the precious memories of Steve. May your love inspire them to focus on the love they had for Steve and that Steve had for them. Help them to face the future with courage, to treasure Steve's wonderful legacy. Sustain us in our faith, O God, even in this troubling time, as you have sustained our people in times of trouble and sorrow throughout the generations. Blessed are you, God. You provide comfort to the brokenhearted. This reading is something that Steve's brother Ricky found. He's letting me read it, but he wants you to know that he hears this as coming from Steve's voice, speaking to each one of us. Life is like a journey on a train with its stations, with changes of routes, and with accidents. At birth, we boarded the train, met our parents, and we believe that they will always travel on our side. However, at some point, at one station, our parents will step down from the train, leaving us on this journey alone. As time goes by, other people will board the train, and they will be significant, like our siblings, friends, children, even the love of your life. Many will step down and leave a permanent vacuum. Others will go so unnoticed that we don't realize that they vacated their seats. This train ride will be full of joy, sorrow, fantasy, expectations, hellos, goodbyes, and farewells. Success consists of having a good relationship with all the passengers, requiring that we give the best of ourselves. The mystery to everyone is we do not know at which station we ourselves will step down. So we must live in the best way, love, forgive, and offer the best of who we are. It's important to do this because when the time comes for us to step down and leave our seat empty, we should leave behind beautiful memories for those who will continue to travel on the train of life. So Steve says, according to his brother, I wish you a joyful journey for the coming year on the train of life. Reap success and give lots of love. More importantly, thank God for the journey. Lastly, I thank you for being one of the passengers on my train. He, as I said, was the president when I became the spiritual leader and the rabbi at B'nai Zion. And I learned so much from Steve. The most important thing to him was family. He treasured his friendships. He also loved his faith. And he was passionate about his work. So much of what he had to do was about trees. I'd like to share some insights about Steve and life that we learned from trees. It's important to have roots. In today's complex world, it pays to branch out. If you really believe in something, don't be afraid to go out on a limb. Grow where you're planted. You can't hide your true colors as you approach the autumn of your life. It's more important to be honest than to be popular. I was wondering when you were going to smile. We're remembering Steve after all. Those came from a collection of wisdom that's called Everything I Need to Know I Learned from Trees. But I also found an article that was called What the Death of an Oak Tree Can Teach Us About Mortality. Apparently, this year, at the end of the year, up in the Northeast, there was an old oak tree that died, and the community came and mourned it. And so they wrote this article about that tree that died that people mourned. To mourn a tree as if it were human is understandable, even natural. There are ways, after all, that trees really are like us. We appear to share a basic body plan. So imagine that a person and a tree are standing next to each other, and you can picture this. And you will see stabilizing thicker parts, creatively shaped middle parts, and branches or arms stretching out. It's also important to see the structure of the tree reminds us of Steve in other ways. His roots go deep in Shreveport for generations, and they go deep concerning his connection to Judaism. He was a solid man, like a trunk. I don't mean his physical appearance. I mean that he was one of my favorite role models when it came to being upright and doing the right, or I would even say righteous thing. How many of you felt like you could go to him for advice? Come on. I did, for everything, like when I buying cars or replacing an air conditioner. Those were just two of the times, by the way, that I learned that when Stephen starts a sentence with baby, it meant I was going to wind up spending a lot of money. Baby, you need to stop putting money into your old car and buy yourself a new car. Baby, you should be getting yourself a new air conditioner. On the other hand, when his sentence ended with baby, it meant that he was comforting me or giving me advice like, it's okay, baby. And I would say that his branches and leaves were something like how he would let stuff go. He often told me that he learned from his daddy that there were some things you took care of, and some things, if you couldn't help, then you let it go. The article continued by saying that trees are indeed like us in some other ways. They grow. This is the article speaking. They respire. They metabolize. They pass on genetic information via DNA. Now, those are words that I'm sure Steve knew because he passed that degree in forestry, but I've never heard him say words with that many syllables. But in just as many ways as they are like us, they're not like us. They cannot move from the place where they take root. Well, that's not true. Steve was apparently more like a tree than other human beings because he did spend most of his life rooted here in Shreveport. The article says that trees respond to their environment on vastly slower time scales than humans. Well, I don't think that the author spent a lot of time in the South. Steve could go pretty slowly. And I apologize for not sounding anything like Steve there. Most significantly, I would argue that trees do not age like us or die like us. Any human over a certain age will tell you that aging is not for wimps. But for trees, apparently it's almost the opposite. The older they get, the better they get at being trees. It went on to explain that the amount of life that they can sustain increases proportionally. Another article explained that all trees will inevitably die at some point and rest in peace. If it's not alive, it can provide a good habitat for wildlife, providing food and shelter. I would argue that Steve has created a world for his family and friends out of trees that will sustain them for a long time. In fact, he's created a family that continues to grow. His oldest grandchild is getting close to graduating high school, and the newest baby is only weeks old. So it's safe to conclude that he was more like a tree than this article would suggest. I suspect that many of you are like me in that I've learned a lot of life from Steve, a lot about life and how he feels about trees. He taught me it's okay to use a lot of paper towels. It's not a tragedy if you accidentally print something you don't need, because more trees can be cut down to make up for what you used. That was kind of the opposite of what they taught me in school, to save those trees. And he said, no, baby, just keep using lots of paper. And he taught me that trees get planted each time trees get cut. My congregation and almost everyone I know has heard me tell this story about Steve. There's a Jewish holiday that's a new year for trees when we celebrate the trees. When I was growing up in New York, we used the holiday to make donations to plant trees in Israel because unlike the frozen ground in New York at the time of the tree's New Year, in Israel it was perfect weather for planting trees. Well, one Friday night in late January, Steve was president, And he was walking out those doors at the end of wishing everybody a good Shabbos, a happy Sabbath. He turned around to me and he said, you know, we've planted over 1.5 million trees already this year. I was shocked. I was impressed. I said something like, wow. And he said, and we have over 1 million more to go. He didn't realize that the New Year for trees was about a week away. I was thrilled. First, because of the amazing quantity of trees that Muslow Forestry planted every year. Second, because I was living in a place where we could plant trees when Jerusalem was planting trees. We're about to celebrate a different kind of New Year. The Jewish New Year starts next Wednesday night. It's not about trees, it's about us. The story we tell children is that between Rosh Hashanah, which begins next Wednesday evening, and Yom Kippur, which is just over a week later, God will be judging each of us to decide what kind of a year we will have in the upcoming year. We're supposed to try to pray and find better ways to be a better person and make the world a better place. God will decide by the end of Yom Kippur who will live and who will die. I think it shows how special Steve was, because if for whatever reason God decreed that this was the year that Steve would die, God let Steve live it out and be with us until the very end of the year. Although everyone in this room wished that it wasn't the last year for Steve, perhaps you can find some comfort from the words of Elie Wiesel. Life is not made of years, but of moments. Far more important than counting our years is making our moments count. May this be our blessing. May it be for us. It certainly was for Steve. He was at services Friday night, less than 2 weeks ago. Once again, as he was walking out those doors, he turned around, he pointed to the beautiful trees around the grounds here, and he said, you know, I planted most of these trees. Jason, the next generation, have planted some of the little ones you see around here with his kids, with Steve's grandkids. They were here shoveling, planting those trees for us. That's his legacy. He planted trees. We remember him as a blessing. We take a moment of silence. From Psalms it says, and he will certainly become like a tree planted by streams of water that gives its own fruit in its own season, and the foliage of which does not wither, and everything he does will succeed. This point in our service, we turn again to the words from our tradition. We say a prayer that I like to think sends the soul onto the next journey. You may know that in Jewish tradition we don't know what happens when someone dies, but I feel like I know, because I feel like I know that the Spirit is still with me. I had pages of other stuff that I was going to tell you, and Steve said, baby, let him go. So I will read this. I ask that you please rise with the mourners. El malei rachamim shochen bamromim, hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina, im kedoshim utorim kazohar harakia, mazchirim et nishmat Stephen Eugene, ben Meir Eliezer v'Janice shalach lo olamo. Bal harachamim, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. A sweet translation of that is, may the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Steve's memory be for a blessing. May we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and destination, our beginning and our end. May Steve's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace, and together we say, Amen. May the love and eternal connection of our souls give us strength as we turn to recite the words hallowed by time, sanctifying the name of God. We honor Steve's memory with the words of the Mourners' Kaddish, which is on the inside of your handout. This is the oldest responsive reading of any faith. It is in Aramaic, so if your Aramaic is not fluent, you can fake it on the top left with the transliteration. Or you can read it in the English, if you prefer, on the bottom left, and you will notice this prayer says nothing about death. It thanks God and praises God because Stephen was in our life. The important thing is that you join your voices, whatever language you choose to say it in, you join your voices with the mourners if you're thankful to God that he was in your life. With the mourners we say, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayachon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha barichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, which we say, Amen. Now let all who are gathered here repeat these words, speaking them to the mourners. First I'll say it in Hebrew. Hamakom yinachem etchem b'toch shara avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. Please repeat after me. May God console you. With all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. We now go forth in peace to life. I'm going to ask that you wait a moment and allow the family to make its way out past the corridor to the confirmation wall where you'll see generations of Muslows. I ask that you allow them to go to the social hall, Lefkowitz Hall, where you can greet with them and tell them stories. May his memory be a blessing. May his family be consoled. And we are grateful that you came to honor his memory. You watching? And if you're not familiar with the building, this way has no stairs, and that way has small steps that you need to go down. You'll see that confirmation wall of generations, 100 years of people, 10th grade versions of themselves. Thank you for coming. You can leave